Hello, and welcome to this presentation titled Freedom's Cause. My name is Stephen Smith, and within this presentation, this is vignette number 6, titled Exclusion to Inclusion. In the opening vignettes within this presentation, I spoke of that knowledge you are to receive on how to resolve those issues that result in so many member marriages ending in divorce, the walking away of so many from the gospel, the hardships associated with diverse members becoming addicted. I wish to assure you, once you have received of the truth had within this vignette, I will begin to fulfill that pledge. However, before I outline those truths, it is requisite you consider all of the following. We will begin with that form of gossiping titled fault-finding, which many indulge in towards diverse American historical figures, as via such they label many honorable men and women as racist, bigots, etc. Therefore, it is expedient you see how, via an exclusion to inclusion process, Americans within traditional marriages have step by step been maturing in their capacity to fulfill the purpose of the Declaration of Independence. It is to be recognized, soon after the acquisition of independence, Americans faced the ramifications of a comfortable cultural mindset that was a carryover from British rule, one that stated only those of established breeding, wealth, and or position have the right to vote and hold political office, as they were the established blue bloods within their society. A mindset that opposed the growing demand had amongst the lower economic stratus of Caucasian men that they also had the right to vote and run for political offices. The new nation's registered voters resolved this potentially harsh issue by expanding the vote unto far more of these men. For the Declaration of Independence to begin to fulfill the fullness of its purpose, this was the vital precedent-setting exclusion to inclusion transition that need stipulate occur within the American mindset, as it allowed people to go from a comfortable cultural to a more mature national mindset by progressing from the light of a star to that of the moon. Many may feel endowing only more Caucasian men with said right is a blatant act of bigoted racism. I would have you note, whatsoever mature national mindset you hold is not yours by means of your efforts. Rather, it has come to you as a national endowment acquired by the unremitting and faithful efforts of your progenitors to advance in their capacity to understand and fulfill the purpose of America's Declaration of Independence. So be respectful, as via their timely and unremitting efforts, America's national mindset went from sustaining blue bloods to upholding all as red-blooded Americans. For when America's earliest patriots turned away from that cultural mindset that was a carryover from British rule, being the mindset of a single star, they were endowed with the capacity to begin to see the moon. For she began to appear in the night sky via a line upon line and precept by precept process, allowing her to transition from the total darkness of a new moon to the bright light of a full moon, allowing your progenitors to transition from seeing the world through those truths associated with their cultural identity to that process by which they began to view it as Americans through the far greater truths associated with the doctrine of freedom. Started to, for I do not mean that by the light of this first full moon, all the problems associated with slavery, segregation, and women's rights were resolved. What I mean is, those issues that revolved around the need for more Caucasian men to obtain the vote were being resolved. For at that time, to have asked America's registered voters to achieve more than this would have been beyond their emotional strength. Their resulting failure would have led to unjustifiable fault-finding. Thus, until the heightened maturity they had just acquired was solidified within them, it was expedient nothing further was asked of them. However, as the emotional strength and joys derived from overcoming this first issue were being solidified within them, this endowed America's voters with a preparatory mindset. As only as this transpired was the next issue of the day rendered apparent, in that it was needful licensed slavery was ended. This transpiring in the manner of the full moon falling back into darkness, as line upon line and precept by precept, patriotic Americans came to recognize they lacked the knowledge by which they could properly resolve the issue of slavery. Yet, even when licensed slavery was ended, the negative national mindset associated with it could not be overcome merely via its ending, any more than the negative national mindset associated with being a British subject was ended merely by means of acquiring independence. For that to transpire, it was requisite the ingrained, comfortable cultural mindset regarding an acceptable workplace environment was resolved, changed from exclusively Caucasian to a multicultural workplace. Thus, for the Declaration of Independence to move forward in fulfilling the fullness of its purpose, this was the second great exclusion to inclusion transition that need stipulate occur within the American mindset, as again it allowed people to go from a comfortable cultural to an even more mature national mindset. Again, to have asked America's registered voters to achieve more would have been beyond their emotional strength as a citizenry. Their resulting failures would have led to unjustifiable fault-finding. So again, until the heightened maturity they had just acquired via overcoming this second harsh issue was solidified within them, it was expedient nothing further was asked. As the emotional strength and joys derived from overcoming this second harsh issue were being solidified within them, this again endowed America's voters with a preparatory mindset. As only as this transpired was the next issue of the day rendered apparent, in that it was needful lawful segregation was ended. As the harsh issues associated with segregation once again caused the full moon to step by step fall back into darkness, showing once again the lack of understanding had amongst Americans on how to properly resolve said issue. But yet again, line upon line and precept by precept, the light of a greater understanding was established amongst Americans, transpiring by their overcoming the ingrained, comfortable cultural mindset that stated an acceptable neighborhood was Caucasian, not multicultural. Thus, for the Declaration of Independence to move forward in fulfilling the fullness of its purpose, This was the next great exclusion to inclusion transition that need stipulate occur within the American mindset. As yet again, it allowed people to set aside a comfortable cultural and continue to develop a more mature national mindset. Again, to have asked America's registered voters to achieve more would have been beyond their emotional strength as a citizenry. Their resulting failures would have led, once more, to unjustifiable fault-finding. So once again, until the heightened maturity they had just acquired via overcoming this third harsh issue was solidified within them, it was expedient nothing further was asked. But as the emotional strength and joys derived from overcoming this third hard issue were being solidified within them, this once again endowed America's voters with a preparatory mindset. As only as this transpired was the next issue of the day rendered apparent, in that it was needful gender discrimination was ended. But to do so, they had to overcome the ingrained, comfortable cultural mindset that stated an acceptable workplace was male-dominated, not based upon gender equality. For the Declaration of Independence to continue moving forward in fulfilling the fullness of its purpose, once more needs stipulated a great exclusion to inclusion process occur within the American mindset, allowing people to again go from a comfortable cultural to the maturity had today within America's national mindset. Thus, step by step and precept by precept, Americans have learned how to let go of diverse cultural mindsets by sustaining those associated with the moon, the doctrine of American freedom. I would have you, as a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, take careful note. The capacity you hold this day to receive of the Word as it pertains unto the doctrine of freedom is based upon the national mindset you, as a citizen, have inherited by the labors of those patriotic citizens who came before you, not the mindset you as a church member hold by the labors of those devout members who came before you. For the mindset of an American patriot is based upon their capacity to properly judge the difference between right and wrong and act accordingly, while the mindset of a devout member is based upon their being told the difference between right and wrong and then act accordingly. Further, each time one of the previous issues was overcome, each time a comfortable cultural mindset was let go of, each time a growth in maturity within the national mindset took place, each time Americans did this, it occurred because husbands and wives who were loyal to one another recognized, via means of truths rendered undeniable, the requisite need of another and felt compassion for them. I trust you see, this act of compassion towards someone in need is the fulfillment of the second great law of the gospel, to love thy neighbor as thyself. For these couples underwent this change in mindset in regards to what they had viewed as acceptable to being recognized as unacceptable for one reason. By means of truths having been rendered undeniable to them, the dictates of their conscience told them it was the right thing to do. For as already outlined, only such couples hold as patriotic citizens the innate capacity to fully sustain the truth by adhering unto the dictates of their conscience, a capacity that this day you are being called upon to live up to by sustaining as a patriot the undeniable truths had within these vignettes via adhering unto the dictates of your conscience. For if the fullness of this capacity had not been lived up to, newly established laws of the land would have lost their virtue. For if slavery was forbidden, yet people demanded the workplace be segregated between jobs Caucasians will and won't do, the virtue had in ending slavery would have been rendered largely void, as all that would have transpired is, instead of vice functioning under the heading of slavery, it would be functioning today under the politically correct heading of a caste system, thereby dictating the maturity required to end segregation. Gender discrimination could never have transpired, and the mature national mindset now held by the majority of America's citizenry could never have transpired. It is also to be noted, if, as a people, Americans refuse to resolve any of these issues, then once the moon fell into darkness, that is where the understanding of the American people would have remained in regards to said issue. This would have resulted in their turning to the light of their individual cultural understandings in order to resolve said issue, as it was by just such a cultural mindset that the vast majority of Caucasian peoples in the southern states functioned when they instigated America's Civil War, did so by rejecting the light of the moon, a maturing national mindset on how to resolve slavery, for that of a single star, their fixed cultural mindset on why slavery must be maintained. In regards to people refusing to give up these cultural mindsets, we know from the teachings of the prophets that the root of all evil is the love of money. 1 Timothy 6, verse 10, quote, "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which, while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." End quote. I trust you see how each of the former cultural mindsets could only be maintained via a love of money. For so long as each was in place, one group within society was guaranteed greater access to wealth than another. That whenever this cultural mindset was replaced by a more mature national mindset, this guarantee was taken away. Instead, each time this transpired, the playing field was made far more even, in that all were upheld to a greater degree as equals under the law in their right to develop their skills and talents, and to thereby acquire wealth and property. Thus, each time this transpired, it had a corresponding reduction in the negative effect the love of money could have upon Americans. This brings us to a close of Vignette 6. It is my sincere hope you will ponder upon, and in your personal prayers, seek a confirmation of what lays within this vignette. Also, as promised, the following vignette, number 7, titled Acceptable to Unacceptable, will unfold those truths by which you can learn how member marriages can, to a very marked degree, be strengthened. This will be followed by Vignette 8, titled The Way Forward, in which you will be shown why so many of our members are walking away from the gospel and the means by which they can be recovered. Of all the forestated, I solemnly testify of it being the truth, and do so in the sacred name of Jesus Christ. Amen.